Hi there. I recently started a regular news show with Yugopnik and Second Thought. It's called, very creatively, First Thought. Tune in 3 times a week for your favorite source of biased news coverage. The link is in the description and pinned comment below. We've all heard the usual trope, taxation is theft. Of course, there are varying sides of why should the state come in and take my hard-earned money to do such and such. There's an argument there, sure. But what if I told you, if you're a regular person, you're most likely already being robbed on the daily by something much bigger than just taxation, if we were to even believe that claim in the first place? Let's start by clarifying the argument a little bit. In the grand scheme of things, taxes are used in capitalist states as a sort of social fund derived from the population to supposedly serve their needs by maintaining roads, schools, hospitals, paying the wages of public employees, etc. In practice, this can vary from providing a decent social safety net like in some European countries, off the backs of overexploited imperial periphery countries usually, take a look at the work of Torkel Lausen, or my unequal exchange video here, to enriching the already richest group of people in the country and funding never-ending military campaigns and wars like in the US. Food for thought. The lowest 10% of families pay more by percentage of their income in taxes than the top 10%. Tax cuts are instituted solely by and for the rich, meanwhile austerity is imposed on the rest of the population. In countries forced into adopting market mechanisms, wealth inequality rises dramatically, devastating entire populations. Generally though, it can be considered that taxes serve a somewhat useful social function depending on the background politics. What about the other form of theft, the much greater one that I just mentioned? The one that you're subject to every single day but we barely even perceive? Let's discuss that then. What I'm specifically talking about is something called the extraction of surplus value. Now, what does this mean exactly? Under capitalism, profit has to come from somewhere. You're hired to work at a firm or office or enterprise because you make the boss more money than you yourself cost to maintain. Simple as. Otherwise, they'd have no incentive to hire you. In some instances, usually public, there are things run at a deficit or economic loss, but that's a conversation for another day, as well as a fairly small minority. The kernel of capitalist profit is the extraction of surplus value. You go to work for, say, 8 hours a day. Out of those 8 hours, you produce, let's say, $200 of output. Your wage at the end of the day, though, is only $100. What's going on here? Why are you getting only half of what you produced? You're the one who did all the work, so where did the other $100 go? Simple, to the capitalist. For 8 hours of work, you only got paid for 4. The other 4 hours you worked, you'll never see the fruit of. Now people can try to play this any way they want. It's the capitalists' right because they risked. A nonsensical argument, as modern capitalist governments guarantee large businesses and those capitalists that started them by vast majority came from already very wealthy and highly connected families. See this video here. Even if we take the risk argument at face value, well, it does go both ways. The workers risk and risk far more for working at that particular enterprise than the capitalist ever does. You risk more driving to work than they have starting and maintaining that business.
The capitalist has a theory that what the capitalist's profit is a payment for is the risk he takes of putting together workers, machines, some notion of how the market works, and putting all those things together to produce a product. Because there's a risk there. You have to kind of know what you're doing, and you're taking a risk because you might produce in the wrong way, you might produce something for which nobody wants to pay money, etc., etc. I love this argument because it's blind. Why is it blind? The capitalist is not the only one who takes a risk. Suppose the capitalist has 10,000 employees. Those 10,000 employees are coming from a variety of places to work in the factory of this man, or the office or the store, who is the employer. They're putting their kids in the local schools. They're moving their families. They're buying a home. They are taking enormous risks to work with and for that employer. He's not the only one taking a risk. If his idea doesn't work, all he's lost is the money he put in. You know what they've lost? The money invested in that house. Because if there's no job, they won't be able to make their mortgage payments. They risk losing their house, which risks depressing the value of properties in the neighborhood. They yank their kids out of the local school because the parents don't have a job anymore. You get the picture? The risk being taken is by everyone.
With that argument dealt with, this isn't the full story. Out of those $100 you're paid, the capitalist state steps in and takes their cut. Let's say the tax rate is 25%. This means your $100 becomes $75. You worked 8 hours and only got back 3 hours worth, but the amount lost to tax, $25, is far less than the amount lost to the capitalist, $100. So why are people more upset about the taxation rate? Simple, because people actually see the taxation rate. On your wage statement, be they bank statements or otherwise, a tax deduction from your wage is directly seen. You directly experience and visualize your hard-earned money leaving you and going to a social fund that you can only hope will actually benefit you eventually, which many times in practice ends up helping those same capitalists that stole your surplus as well. With surplus extraction, however, you don't ever directly visualize that, and money relations, being our social expression of worth rather than, say, labor outputs, obfuscates this theft even more. Back to the video in just a second. Let's hear from today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. For a lot of research that I do for my videos, I end up hitting pages that aren't available in my location. That's frustrating, as you can imagine. Geo-restriction really does suck, but not with Atlas VPN. For those unaware, a virtual private network makes all of your internet traffic travel through an encrypted tunnel. This way, it protects you from spying, public Wi-Fi dangers, and hides your IP address and your online activities. It even allows you to change your location for all your researching needs. Developed by top cybersecurity specialists and IT engineers in 2019, Atlas VPN was created to make the internet accessible and secure for everybody. Currently, it has more than 6 million users worldwide, and boasts the best VPN deal on the market, with the most affordable online protection plan for just under $2 per month, if you can believe it, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So, what are you waiting for? Go down to the description and click that link and use my code Hakeem to get a 3-year subscription for just $183 a month, with 3 months free. But that's not all. You get blazing fast speeds for streaming or gaming, unlimited protection for all your devices, an inbuilt ad and malware blocker, and you'll get to save some extra cash as Atlas VPN will find you the best deal online from everything from your online subscriptions to airlines, hotels, and more. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. It means you can get a 3-year subscription for just $183 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Time is running out, so get your deal by clicking the link in the video description below. Massive thanks to Atlas VPN for the sponsorship. This is what allows me to pay my editor fairly, so the support is highly appreciated. Alright, back to the video. Imagine if everything was honest and out in the open. At the end of a day's work, you see your wage statement, which goes as follows. Full labor worth $200, surplus extracted for the capitalist $100, tax deduction to the capitalist state $25, total sum left $75. All of a sudden, people would start demanding their full right, or at least a bigger chunk of it, no? To say all that in plain English, tax is considered to be theft because you see your full salary come in and then a portion deducted. Surplus extraction is the true and far grander theft, but you don't see any portion deducted, and hence you are never conscious of what is truly going on. Imagine if you did see what really happens. 100% is how much you make in value, 50% is the surplus extracted, and from whatever's left of your salary, another 25% is taken as tax. This is all an obvious oversimplification to drive a point home. People are usually paid monthly, not at the end of the day. Surplus extraction occurs at differing rates at differing enterprises and fields. And right now we're not discussing finance capital and other forms for simplicity's sake, but they do play a big role as well. The point still stands though. Overall, you produce more output than you ever get back. And the output goes to a capitalist that uses it to replenish capital stock, to reinvest in the circuit of capital, and to develop their business further. Or he spends it on fancy booze and yachts, it really depends. The capitalist gets taxed too, I hear someone yell. Well, yeah, true, but their taxation rates are way lower than yours or mine, and a lot of the time they get away with paying no taxes scot-free. They have power within the capitalist state to manage their affairs as they wish. That's why Amazon often not only pays no taxes, but actually receives tax money. Yes, your hard-earned income going to subsidize the life and business of the wealthiest man on earth. Imagine if we had a different system. Imagine if instead of a class of net exploiters that exist parasitically off the labor of working people, we had a society oriented towards the development of everyone equally. We can say hypothetically that this system has a different setup of the enterprise, office, or workplace. Instead of like under capitalism, where you have no say in your work and have half or more of your surplus stolen, you have a democratic enterprise. One in which you and your fellow co-workers democratically decide how and what to produce, or whatever other form of economic output your workplace generates. Where you democratically decide on the divisions of your labor, not of a minority of output going to you in a disappointing wage and the majority going to a capitalist, but instead where you divide your work as output that goes to you for your needs and personal development, and output that goes to a direct social fund that doesn't end up as just another avenue for the mega ultra rich to derive more wealth from. In plain words, work for oneself and work for society. Instead of working 4 hours for yourself and 4 hours for a capitalist, everyone would work 4 hours for themselves and 4 hours for social development generally. Logically, since a certain set amount of output is designated for social development in a common fund, there would also be no need for taxes, right? Exactly right. All of this sounds so familiar. Oh wait, that's because this was something that actually happened. This is the actual practice of socialism. Countries like Cuba, the USSR, the GDR had this, or a similar setup to differing degrees, where social output was controlled by regular working people. so that the surplus they produced didn't go to enrich a small group of unaccountable capitalists, but instead went to the direct maintenance of society. Of course, depending on the era and location, there were some taxes at certain levels, but they were entirely negligible compared to any modern capitalist country. If you dislike the former examples, that's fine too. We can learn from them so that we do it better in the future. And other issues of former socialism are also covered in my recent video here. However, this is why, in socialist countries like those just mentioned, there was high-quality free education and healthcare at all levels, despite said countries being far poorer than the ever-grand US of A, which can't even house its own population, let alone develop healthcare and education for them. Full employment, no homelessness, education and healthcare for all, the cultural and social development of all members of society, not off the backs of third world colonies and the exploitation of the poorest on earth, but through a population's own effort. Those who hand-wave this, claiming this is starry-eyed utopianism, only do so in a transparent attempt to distract you from these truths. Not only is this possible, it's already been done. Socialism directly serves your interests, and all the rest that you've heard against it is only theater hoping to make you complacent with the far greater theft that occurs to you every minute of every day you work under capitalism. One thing left unmentioned is that under capitalism, the $100 you're left with are supposed to go and cover your healthcare needs, your educational fees, your groceries, rent, insurances, and 100 other expenses. Under socialism, there is no rent, as housing is free or entirely negligible in cost as is provided and maintained by the government. Necessary consumer goods, food, hygiene products, baby products, etc. are heavily subsidized. You don't need insurances as maintenance is covered by the state or your workplace. You have no educational or healthcare fees as those are covered as well. In the end, this means that the vast majority of the population is materially better off under socialism than under capitalism, and this has been proven not only by the research done into this matter, but also by contemporary research like that in the UK done by Paul Cockshott. Hold on though, aren't socialist countries funded by extremely high taxes? No, not at all. This is a bad caricature of what socialists actually want and have done, and is repeated endlessly by right-wing pundits who either know better and are lying, or simply don't know better because they're ignorant. You pick which, Belgium, the Netherlands, etc., they aren't socialist countries. They're the ones that fund their state programs through taxation, unequal exchange, and they're taking part in imperialism of the global south, which I remind you I made a video on here. Historically, actual socialist countries only had a small ceremonial tax on select things, like property in the USSR. Other socialist countries had zero tax completely, like in Albania. Some countries had limited income taxes set, again, to ceremonial amounts, percentages as low as 3, 4, or 5%, or value-added tax to purchased goods. Generally though, and on the whole, socialist countries had far lower taxation at practically all levels than even the relatively quote-unquote light taxing capitalist countries. Enough talk about historical socialism though. What about now? What modern developments has science brought us? Well, quite a lot, actually. With the advent of instant communications, the internet, and the widespread use of smartphones, frequent social referendums on the spending of the social surplus produced in those other 4 hours can be democratically voted on a society-wide basis. You directly could vote on how much percentage could be used for what end, and fancy math determines what levels according to democratic consensus. The aforementioned Paul Cockshott has lectured on these here. You wonder why this isn't already a thing with taxes, rather than social surplus, which doesn't really exist in that form in developed capitalist countries. The answer is painfully obvious. If citizens were allowed to decide where their taxes go, all of a sudden the rich start seeing their privileges running dry, the US military budget contracts by orders of magnitude, massive corporations see their subsidies taken away. No wonder it isn't a thing. You stand to gain everything, and the ruling class stands to lose. A lot. If you're interested in learning more, take a look at my previous 2 videos on why exactly capitalism is an untenable system, as well as why socialism is superior. I include book recommendations and everything. A good read for a deeper dive is Marxism and Socialism, Progressive Taxation and Socialization of Property, which covers the historical debate. It should give you some food for thought, but read it with a critical eye. That's it for this time. If you enjoy what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you to Viton, Kelsil, Furry Beaver, Dick Wolf, okay come on, The Sebester, The Sepster, Gus Carlisle, Wyatt, Jasonian Ringu, Jack Leary, Erlen Borda, Anatole Arison, Nunya Biss, Sleuthmakers, Gary the Gary, Torin Rettig, Misling, Ray Blue, Daniel, Lena Yumin, Aprol, Neox, Saractonos, Jacob Corvinius, Kyan Barbieri, Exploding Turtle, Vanish, Gold, Blimbo, Augustus Limond, and Professional Strawberry. Thanks for watching.